Hello everyone, and I am going to be reading chapter 2 of this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. This is by far one of my favorite books, and here goes the chapter. Chapter 2: Happiness is a Problem. About 2500 years ago, in the Himalayan foothills of present day Nepal, there lived in a great palace a king who was going to have a son. For this son, the king had a particularly grand idea. He would make the child's life perfect. The child would never know a moment of suffering. Every need, every desire would be accounted for at all times. The king built high walls around the palace that prevented the prince from knowing the outside world. He spoiled the child, lavishing him with gifts and foods, surrounding him with servants who catered to his every whim. And just as planned, the child grew up ignorant of the routine cruelties of human existence. All of the prince's childhood went on like this. But despite the endless luxury and opulence, the prince became a kind of pissed off young man. Soon every experience felt empty and valueless. The problem was that no matter what his father gave him, it never seemed enough, never meant anything. So late one night, the prince snuck out of his palace to see what it was beyond the walls. He had a servant drive him through the local village, and what he saw horrified him. For the first time in his life, the prince saw human suffering. He saw sick people, old people, homeless people, people in pain, even people dying. The prince returned to the palace and found himself in a sort of existential crisis. Not knowing how to process what he had seen, he got all emo about everything and complained a lot. And as is so typical of young men, the prince ended up blaming his father for the very things his father tried to do for him. It was the riches, the prince thought, that had made him so miserable, that had made life seem so meaningless. He decided to run away. But the prince was more like his father than he knew. He had grand ideas too. He wouldn't just run away, he would give up his royalty, his family, and all of his possessions and live in the streets, sleeping like an animal in the dirt. There he would starve himself, torture himself, and beg for scraps of food from strangers for the rest of his life. The next night, the prince snuck out of the palace again, this time never to return. 4 years he lived like a bum, a discarded and forgotten remnant of society, the dog shit cake to the bottom of the social totem pole. As planned, the prince suffered greatly. He suffered through disease, through hunger, through pain, loneliness, and decay. He confronted the brink of death itself, often limited to eating a single nut each day. A few years went by, then a few more, and then nothing happened. The prince began to notice that his life of suffering wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. It wasn't bringing him the insight that he desired. It wasn't revealing any deeper mystery of the world or its ultimate purpose. In fact, the prince came to know what the rest of us always kind of known. The suffering totally sucks, and it's not necessarily meaningful either. As with being rich, there is no time to value in suffering when it's done without purpose. And soon the prince came to the conclusion that this grand idea, like his father's, was in fact a fucking terrible idea. And he should probably go do something else instead. Haha. Totally confused, the prince cleaned himself up and went and found a big tree near the river. He decided that he would sit under the tree and not get up until he came up with another grand idea. As the legend goes, the confused prince sat under that tree for 49 days. We won't delve into the biological viability of sitting in the same spot for 49 days, but let's just say that in time, the prince came to a number of profound realizations. One of those realizations was this: that life itself is a form of suffering. The rich suffer because of their riches, the poor suffer because of their poverty. People without a family suffer because they have no family, people with a family suffer because of their family. People who pursue worldly pleasures suffer because of their worldly pleasures, and people who abstain from worldly pleasures suffer because of their abstention. This isn't to say that all suffering is equal. Some suffering is certainly more painful than other suffering, but we all suffer nonetheless. Years later, the prince would build his own philosophy and share it with the world, and this would be its first and central tenet: that pain and loss are inevitable and we should let go of trying to resist them. The prince would later be known as the Buddha. And in case you haven't heard of him, he was kind of a big deal. There is a premise that underlies a lot of our assumptions and belief. The premise is that happiness is an algorithmic, that it can be worked for and earned and achieved as as if it were getting accepted to law school or building a really complicated Lego set. If I achieve X, then I can be happy. If I look like Y, then I can be happy. If I can be a person like Z, then I can be happy. This premise, though, is the problem. Happiness is not a solvable equation. Dissatisfaction and unease are inherent part of human nature, and as we'll see, necessary components to creating consistent happiness. The problem, the Buddha argued this form of a theological and a philosophical perspective. I will make the same argument in this chapter, but I will make it in form of a biological perspective and with pandas. The misadventures of Disappointment Panda. If I could invent a superhero, I would invent one called the Disappointment Panda. He would wear a cheesy eye mask and a shirt with a giant capital T on it that was way too small for his big panda belly. And his superpower would be to tell people harsh truths about themselves as they needed to hear but didn't want to accept. He would go door to door like a Bible salesman and ring doorbells and say things like, sure, making a lot of money makes you feel good, but it won't make your kids love you. Or have to ask if you have to ask yourself to trust your wife, then you probably don't. Or what you consider friendship is really just your constant attempts to impress other people. Then he'd tell the homeowner to have a nice day and saunter on down to the next house. It would be awesome and sick and sad and uplifting and necessary. After all, the greatest truths in life usually are the most unpleasant to hear. Disappointment Panda would be the hero that none of us would want but all of us would need. He'd be the proverbial vegetables to our mental diet of junk food. He'd make our lives better despite making us feel worse. He'd make us stronger by tearing us down, brighten our future by showing us the darkness. Listening to him would be like watching a movie where the hero dies in the end. You love it even more, despite it making you feel horrible because it feels real. So while we are here, allow me to put on my Disappointment Panda mask and drop another unpleasant truth on you. We suffer for the simple reason that suffering is biologically useful. It is nature's preferred agent for inspiring change. We have evolved to always live with a certain degree of dissatisfaction and insecurity because it's the mildly dissatisfied and insecure creature that is going to do the most work to innovate and survive. This idea keeps on repeating in every religious text I've read, that suffering is really important and chasing happiness ultimately gives you a lot of pain all the time. We are wired to become dissatisfied with whatever we have and satisfied by only what we do not have. This constant dissatisfaction has kept our species fighting and striving, building and conquering. So no, our own pain and misery aren't a bug of human evolution, they are a feature. Pain in all its forms is the body's most effective means of spurring action. Take something as simple as stubbing your toe. If you're like me, when you stub your toe, you scream enough four-letter words to make the Pope Francis cry. You also probably blame some poor inanimate object for your suffering. Stupid table, you say. Or maybe you even go as far as to question your entire interior design philosophy based on your throbbing foot. What kind of an idiot puts a table there anyway? Seriously? But I digress. That horrible stubbed toe induced pain, the one you and I and the Pope hate so much, exists for an important reason. Physical pain is a product of our nervous system, a feedback mechanism to give us a sense of our own physical proportions, where we can and cannot move, what we can and cannot touch. When we exceed those limitations, our nervous system duly punishes us to make sure that we pay attention and never do it again. And this pain, as much as we hate it, is useful. Pain is what teaches us to pay attention to when we are young or careless. It helps us show what's good for us versus what's bad for us. It helps us understand and adhere to our own limitations. It teaches us not to fuck around hot stoves or stick metal objects into electrical sockets. Therefore, it's not always beneficial to avoid pain and seek pleasure, since pain can, at times, be life or death important to your well-being. But pain is not merely physical, as anyone who has had to sit through the first Star Wars prequel can tell you. We humans are capable of experiencing acute psychological pain as well. In fact, research has found out that our brains don't register much difference between physical pain and psychological pain. So when I tell you that my first girlfriend cheating on me and leaving me felt like an ice pick slowly inserted into the center of my heart, that's because, well, it hurt so much I might as well have had an ice pick slowly inserted into the corner of my heart. Like physical pain, our psychological pain is an indication of something out of equilibrium, some limitation that has been exceeded. And like our physical pain, our psychological pain is not necessarily always bad or even undesirable. In some cases, experiencing emotional or psychological pain can be healthy and necessary. Just like stubbing our toe teaches us to walk into fewer tables, the emotional pain of rejection and failure teaches us how to avoid making the same mistakes in the future. And this is what's so dangerous about a society that coddles itself more and more from inevitable discomforts of life. We lose the benefits of experiencing healthy doses of pain, a loss that disconnects us from the reality of the world around us.